Hi guys, welcome to Hazu official channel. So today I'm going to play Roblox, playing my version, but I'm going to use auto mode. Auto clicker. Yeah, it's this app lah. This one, see? This one you can use. You just press this button and then it will click itself. You don't need to click. So if you do like this, the thing will gone lah, like invisible. Yeah, so I'm going to play my version. I don't need to do anything, just see while I'm doing my work and listen to podcast Against The Odds. So okay guys, let's play. So guys, this is the game. While I doing my work and listen to the podcast and just see the game lah. Wait lah, loading. Just press this thing, boom, done. So this is my version. I need to save money.
Against the Odds, ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the app today. It's late morning on October 22nd, 1972, and Nando Parado stands outside the fuselage of the crashed Fairchild airplane. He's alone, examining a chocolate-covered peanut in the palm of his hand. Nando's been saving it. He puts it in his mouth and sucks off the chocolate, and spits the nut back into his palm. Later, he will allow himself a tiny nibble. After this, there's nothing left to eat. It's been 10 days since Nando's Uruguayan rugby team's flight crashed here, high in the Andes Mountains. And each day seems to be colder than the last. It's a bone-chilling cold that cuts to the core. Nando's been shivering constantly, and he knows it's burning calories he needs to make it out alive. As an athlete, he's aware that the body requires massive caloric intake at altitudes like this. Most Andean hikers consume up to 15,000 calories a day to keep going. But Nando has eaten almost nothing for a week now. He's starting to feel his body take a turn for the worst. At the start of this trip, he was in the physical prime of his life, but now his body moves like he's aged 40 years. It's exhausting to even walk. But the truth is, he's lucky to be alive. A week ago, he was still unconscious from the plane crash. It's a miracle that his head wound is starting to heal. There was a blizzard earlier this morning, but for the moment, the sky is clear. Nando is thankful for the small bit of warmth the sun is providing. He closes his eyes and leans his head back to face the sun. He thinks of his mother, who died in the crash, his sister, who perished from her injuries only a few days ago. If they died when he was at home, he would have been incapacitated with sadness. But here on the mountain, his body knows there is no time for grief. So Nando simply imagines his mother and sister in the sky, watching over him. They'll help carry him to safety. The landscape around him is quiet. With his eyes closed, it seems almost peaceful. When he opens them, he notices that even the steep, jagged mountain to the west looks less threatening without dark clouds circling its peak. But he knows it's time to start making a plan. Nothing can live in such inhospitable conditions. There's not a tree or a bush, a single blade of grass, no life at all, only stone and ice. That means they won't be able to find anything to eat. Up until now, Nando's been afraid to say out loud what he's thinking, but he can't keep silent any longer. He's going to have to talk to Roberto. Nando looks over at where the passengers who died in the crash lie, covered under a thin layer of snow. Their spirits have left their bodies, and they've left behind the only sustenance to be found. Nando's certain that their only chance at survival is to send a small team through the mountains and down into Chile for help. And Nando plans to lead this team, but he'll never be able to climb through the Andes with a peanut as his ration. He will need to fill himself with protein and fat. He will need to build up his strength. All of the survivors will. Nando knows the choice is grim. If they want to live, then they must eat the dead.
13 years ago, in one of the cramped dorm rooms of prestigious Sarah Lawrence College, a nightmare unfolded. The students didn't know it yet, but when a bizarre new roommate moved in, he would change their lives forever. Devil in the Dorm, an exclusive new podcast on Wondery Plus, dives into the horrifying story of Larry Ray, who moved into the dorms with his daughter. Shortly thereafter, he started to control, manipulate, and brainwash some of the students. Before long, Ray had amassed what could be best described as a small cult following. Devil in the Dorm, a 6-part investigative series, draws from transcripts, exhibits, audio files, and video recordings from Larry Ray's federal trial to give listeners unprecedented insight into his heinous crimes, which include extorting millions of dollars through violence, psychological torture, and forced sex work. You can listen to Devil in the Dorm exclusively on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.
From Wondery, I'm Cassie DePeckle, and this is Against the Odds. On October 13th, 1972, the Old Christians Rugby Club was flying from Montevideo, Uruguay to Santiago, Chile, when their plane crashed in the Andes Mountains. At first, survivors of the crash expected rescuers to arrive quickly, but now, 10 days have passed. They remain stranded and their food supply has just run out. It's clear that they need to take their survival into their own hands. But the question is, how? To what lengths are they willing to go to keep from starving? This is episode 2, The Cutting. Roberto Canessa sits at the center of the fuselage and waits as his friends and teammates settle in around him. A cold wind whips in through the open back of the plane, but Roberto hardly feels it. His mind is elsewhere. He's preparing to make a speech. He and Nando have called an urgent meeting, but they haven't disclosed the subject. Roberto is taking the lead. Unlike Nando, he is a devout Catholic, and his word will carry weight with the more pious survivors. Roberto nods politely as each of the 27 other survivors files in and takes a seat in the cramped space. Outside, the light is starting to dim. He opens the meeting with a simple declaration: "We are starving to death." Roberto spent the past days scouring the fuselage and surrounding areas for anything to eat. He and Nando split open seat cushions, hoping to find hay, but found only inedible foam. They harvested small bits of moss from the tops of stones in the area, but there wasn't enough to be a reliable food source for 27 people. Roberto requested that a small team check every pocket and bag on the plane for any undiscovered morsels of food, but they couldn't find anything. They even tried to eat leather straps on their luggage, but the chemicals they were treated with only made them sick. There is simply nothing to eat. They've exhausted every option. Roberto glances around at his friends' sunken faces. They don't just look tired, they look defeated. It's as though they'd like nothing better than to shut their eyes and drift away. But Roberto needs to summon their last bit of fight. A big decision has to be made. We will have to rescue ourselves. But how can we do that when we don't have enough strength to climb out of here? We need to eat. We must eat to gain our strength. And the only food available to us is the dead. Roberto pauses. Finally, he said it out loud, the grotesque thought that's been plaguing them all. He expects a fight. He expects people to get up and walk out, but nobody budges. Nobody so much as whispers, except for the sound of the wind now howling outside. The fuselage is quiet. Roberto continues his speech. He draws on his medical background to give a clinical explanation of what is happening to their bodies as they starve. He then tells his friends, if we don't eat, we're choosing to die. Next, he makes his religious argument. If God doesn't want them to live, then they would have died in the crash. It is their duty to God to remain alive. Choosing not to eat is suicide, and suicide is a sin. It all seems clear in his mind, but he wonders what his friends are thinking. No one has said a word. Then, Marcelo Perez, the team captain and most devout of all the old Christians, gets to his feet. I believe that God has chosen us to survive, but I don't believe he wants us to eat our friends. He will show us another way. Roberto starts to answer, but Nando cuts him off. The bodies lying outside are no longer our friends. Their souls have left them. They are carcasses. They are meat like the cattle we eat back home. Next, Gustavo Zerbino chimes in. If I were to die, I'd want my body to keep you alive. How many of you feel the same? Roberto scans the group. Most heads are nodding. Soon, another boy calls out that he too would want to nourish his friends. Then another, and another. Roberto senses the Liliana Maytal speaks up. She's the only remaining female survivor and a longtime fan of the old Christians. I won't eat another human being. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I just can't. Liliana's husband, Javier, takes her hand and agrees with her. Then, from the back of the plane, someone else raises a different objection. What I want to know is, who will do the cutting? Who will cut the flesh from our dead friends' bodies? Roberto looks around the room. This time, no one makes eye contact, not even Nando. He walks over to the suitcase where he keeps his medical supplies, then reaches inside and pulls out a shard of glass he uses for cutting bandages. At the door to the fuselage, he stops and turns. I will do it. Solemnly, Fido and Gustavo stand up and follow him outside. Roberto trudges through the snow to the makeshift graveyard. where the bodies are buried. Part of one corpse protrudes from the snow, but its face is hidden. That makes it easier. In silence, he begins to cut. Half an hour later, Roberto and his assistants return to the fuselage with thin strips of meat in their hands. No one will make eye contact with them. Roberto knows that if his friends are going to eat, he will have to set an example. He takes a piece of the ice-cold flesh in his hand and raises it to his mouth. At first, his revulsion wins out. His hand falls back down to his side. If you don't eat, you will die, he tells himself. He asks God to give him the strength of his convictions. Then he tries again. He shuts his eyes, pushes the flesh past his lips, and swallows. Afterwards, he feels no guilt. If anything, he feels proud and thankful. With God's help, he has conquered an ancient superstition. He knows now that he will live for as long as it takes to get off this mountain. Marcelo Perez wakes up on the morning of the 11th day on the mountain. It was a miserable night of sleep. His clothes are hardened with frost, but somehow Marcelo still takes pride in getting up first. He's the leader, and as team captain, he feels it's his responsibility to keep the teammates motivated. That's why he spent the past week assigning different tasks to different team members. Even little chores like organizing the fuselage and airing out the blankets help to keep everyone feeling as if they have a purpose. And a purpose is a drive to survive. All they need to do is hold out until the rescue mission comes. Marcelo glances over to where Roberto and Gustavo are sleeping. He half expects to find them sick, writhing in pain. Who knows what eating human flesh will do to a person? But everyone who chose to eat the meat yesterday is still sleeping, or at least trying to. Marcelo rises from his cushions and shakes the shoulder of Roy Harley. Get up, Roy. It's time to set up the radio. Marcelo has been waking up Roy every morning and leading him out into the snowfield. Together, they tune into the transistor radio Marcelo found in the wreckage. It's not much, but with a couple of homemade antennas, Roy is able to hear a station or two through the static. It's only been soccer scores and weather reports so far, but Marcelo is praying they'll hear some news about the search for the old Christians. Roy groans and rolls over on the seat cushion he's been using as a pillow. It's too cold. Get someone else. It's your job, Roy. You're the only one who knows how to do it. You're good at it. Come on. Marcelo jumps down out of the fuselage, then turns back to make sure Roy is following behind him. Nando and another player are already outside waiting to make the trek. The sun is beginning to peek through the clouds, and Marcelo savors the warmth. He picks up the antenna and walks out to the area a few yards from the plane where they've been able to get the best reception. Finally, Roy appears carrying the little radio. He sits down and starts fiddling with the dials. Marcelo watches as Roy scrolls. He doesn't hear anything promising at first, but then, suddenly Roy finds a station and holds the radio close to his ear. Marcelo strains to hear what the radio is picking up, but there's so much static. He can barely hear a man speaking in a flat, businesslike tone. He calls out, "Roy, what is it? What did he say?" Roy looks up and shakes his head. Marcelo can see he's already crying. They're suspending the search. They're abandoning us. Marcelo falls to his knees. All he can do is cover his face with his hands and scream. His cry echoes off the rocks, and the other men stay frozen in place. This whole time, he's felt so certain that rescuers were on their way. And now, he knows they're not. One of the other boys runs out of the plane towards them. He must have heard Marcelo's screams. As soon as he sees their faces, he understands what has happened. Who is going to tell the others? Marcelo looks at the silly antennas he's holding in his hands. How foolish to think that the outside world cared about them. Them to the ground and takes a deep breath. He doesn't want to let the others feel the depths of hopelessness that are washing over him. I don't think we should tell the others. If we're all going to die, we can at least let them go on hoping till the end. The boy shakes his head. We have to let them know. Marcelo slumps down into the snow. I can't tell them. I can't bear it. Marcelo feels the boy staring at him for a moment. Then, the boy shrugs and turns to Nando. In the distance, another group is headed toward them. Marcelo can't even bring himself to stand. He simply looks on as Nando and the boy make their way toward the fuselage and the other group. Marcelo's head falls into his hands as he hears them yell up to the plane. They've called off the search. Marcelo hears crying in the distance, and he hears Nando shouting, now we don't have to wait anymore. We're getting out of here on our own. Marcelo collapses into the snow and finally allows himself to weep. He can feel the tears freezing to his face.
Okay guys, I will end my video over here. I will be continue on my part 2, my mission. Yeah, so okay guys, see you guys. Hopefully you guys like my video and share and subscribe my channel for more videos. If I play Roblox from now on, I mean like not every day lah, cause I have also other things to do. So yeah, I will try to upload on my next video lah, part 2. So okay guys, see you guys and stay safe, stay positive, and okay, bye bye.